I had a really interesting conversation with my husband and father-in-law the other day. We went over what me, my husband, and our now 7-year-old twins have been through in the last 3.5 years, ever since we moved to Western North Carolina. And it was like one thing after another, hectic, wild events happening. And I thought I would do a little recap for you guys, what we've been up to ever since we decided to move here and do this whole like homesteading entrepreneurial lifestyle. When you actually stack it all up together, it's like pretty wild. So let's get into it. First things first, this is my first long form in a really long time, so bear with me as I kind of do a bit of storytelling for you guys. But if you do like this style of video, definitely give me a follow. I do want to do more long form video with you guys, especially once we're back in our farmhouse living there. I want to do like day in the life and stuff like that. We'll be able to get into all of that if you subscribe. It was summer of 2022. It was about a year after my mother-in-law had passed. We had moved from Canada to Florida to help care for her. Our family and my father-in-law, they were all looking at each other being like, is this where we want to kind of settle for the next few years? What do we want to do with our lives? How do we want to raise our girls? They were 3 at the time. And Mark had always had this dream of building an engineering colony, somewhere where we can get land. And he fell in love with Western North Carolina. He and his dad checked it out and they're like, this is one of the coolest places in the world ever. Like, we gotta go. I was like, I love Florida. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? You guys love it so much. Okay, fine. I will go take a look. I trust you guys. Let's do this thing. So he and I road tripped up there with our daughters, driving. As soon as I saw the Blue Ridge, I was just looking at it and being like, oh, I think I get it. I wanted to put roots back down. We hadn't felt settled in a really long time ever since we left Canada. And Florida was just so pricey. And we didn't really want to be there. Didn't really want to raise our girls there. He's like, Allie, if we buy land here and we settle here, you can have like any animal you're willing to take care of. You realize that, right? Like you can have chickens. And I was like, see no more. I want to move here. This is amazing. Went back to Florida. That's all fine. One of the many hurricanes that rolled through Florida, I forget which one it was, we kind of got knocked out of power and internet for, gosh, at least a week or two. We were sitting in the heat of Florida with no power. And I'm like, maybe we should just like go back to North Carolina for a little bit. So we went for 3 weeks in like the most beautiful season, just the beginning of fall. It was so gorgeous. And our girls would like play around our Airbnb. And this is where I met my friend Mary, who eventually ended up becoming my chicken dealer. Like she gives me chickens all the time. I was just getting this glimmer of what life is going to be like. We had always planned on staying in Florida for at least another year and figuring out what we wanted to do and where we wanted to be. And now it's like, we need to move. We need to move now. We were approaching winter, and my husband and father-in-law were like, it's going to be like kind of cold here. Like, are you sure? And I'm like, no, we are moving. So I found us a rental. And in December of 2022, right before Christmas, we moved to Marshall. Mark had already bought land with his dad in Spring Creek. For me, sight unseen. I hadn't even seen it yet, but I'd seen the area and I was like, I trust you guys. The pictures look great. Let's do it. And so we moved to Marshall just to get eyes on and start thinking about like developing the land. Pretty much like day 3 of being there, we lost water. And we lost water because coming from Canada, you never have to think about leaving your taps running. Everything is built in a way to be able to deal with the super, super cold weather of Canada. Apparently, they don't do that here. And you have to leave your taps running when it gets really cold. We didn't know that. And we lost water. And then the pump broke and we were without water with 3-year-old girls for like 2 weeks because we couldn't get anyone out over Christmas to come fix it. And our landlord couldn't get anyone. And so we spent the first 2 weeks filthy. I would take the girls to the Y to like shower in the city. But we were happy and we were together and we were in North Carolina and it was great. And we spent the first year in Marshall. And then we're like, you know what? It's an hour drive to our land. We really want to be in Spring Creek and experience it. So I found us a rental in Spring Creek. So in February of 2023, we moved to this little farmhouse right on the highway. And I was so happy because it had a barn and a paddock and it meant that I could like start getting animals. So I got goats and we just happened to be in this little pocket where all of these dogs were dumped. Strays kept like showing up at our property. And I started posting about it. And that's kind of how my account got started. It started with like chickens, and then next thing you know, all these dogs showing up. People love that. So Pretty Sweet Acres kind of launched when we moved to Spring Creek. That was all great. And we were there from February through to October. And that's when Hurricane Helene hit. And we had already been through a hurricane in Florida, so we're like, "Please, it's not gonna be like the hurricanes in Florida. Like, come on, we're landlocked. Like, this is please." Yeah, I mean, if any of you followed that hurricane, it was rough. We're an hour outside of Asheville. We weren't near the French Broad, but we had this little creek behind our rental, and we kind of kept looking at it as the hurricane was approaching, being like, "There's no way we're gonna get flooded out. Are you kidding me?" And people said, this valley did flood a bit 9 years ago during some heavy rainfall, so just be aware. And so we got some escape plans in place. I'm like, okay, well, if the water starts to rise, first of all, it's not going to knock out the house, but the animals might be affected. The barn had a second floor, so I'm like, I'll just bring all the goats and everyone up a level. We'll go down the road. My father-in-law had a trailer parked on our land. I'm like, we'll go to granddad's and that's all fine. So that night, we had our to-go bags packed just in case. We're like, please, nothing's going to happen. I kept waking up every hour. I set my alarm just to like peek outside and make sure everything's okay. And finally at 5 a.m., I opened the door and I saw that the water was almost at our door. And I closed the door and I said, Mark, we got to go. And so he got the girls up and I ran out and the water was already up to my knees. And I basically carried my goats up to the second floor with our livestock dogs. I made sure all the chickens were up a level. I think we had our geese were like swimming down below. So I lifted them up as well. We had a house dog that we carried to the car, literally could not have fit the goats and the livestock dogs in our van. But again, it was a creek. Like we knew that they'd be fine. I think what was scarier than leaving the animals behind was the fact that we couldn't see the road and we didn't know what kind of damage it would be. The water was up to our hubcaps as we started driving out towards Granddad's, and we looked right because we were going to turn towards the land and we're like, I don't know what the conditions are going to be like there. Let me rewind a little bit. After all this renting and trying to get the land developed, we realized what a big undertaking it would be to actually build a house on the land. We're so busy. We got businesses going. We got little kids. I think what we need to do is just like put a pause on that. And we found this old historic farmhouse right down the road that was for sale. It was in like rough shape. It was pretty old. We had to like fix the foundation and stuff, but at least it was an existing structure that we could fix up a little bit and then move into. So we had just closed on the farmhouse. So we're sitting there on Highway 209. The water's up to our hubcaps. And Mark and I are like, I think we got to kind of keep driving. I think we should go to the farmhouse because it's actually up a level. So we drove to the farmhouse, and this farmhouse had one working hot plate, one mattress, which I think me and the girls slept in. Mark slept on the floor, and no other furniture. And we're like, okay, like let's ride this storm out. And the house was unaffected, thank goodness. We lost power, we lost internet, no cell service. Woke up the next morning, and Mark walked by foot back to the rental to make sure like the dogs were fine and everything like that. Everyone was fine. He met his father there, but we started to see the devastation. We were actually locked for a while between a fallen tree and part of the road had broken in. So in order to start bringing some of our stuff over from the rental that had been flooded to our house, which was like maybe a 10-minute drive, we actually had to go through Asheville, Waynesville, and back up. And it was an hour and a half of driving just to pack up our vehicle and then go all the way back so that we could have like mattresses and clothes and stuff like that. Mark and his dad grabbed the dogs and they walked the 4 miles from the rental to our new farmhouse. So everyone just commuted by foot, hopped over the broken road, scrambled to put up like a makeshift fence. We were just like so glad to have made it through the hurricane. A lot of people were in much worse condition than we were. We ended up spending a couple of months using Wi-Fi at the community center, at gas stations, just to like send emails out to get a better work done. Our farmhouse had no Wi-Fi. It would have been like a new install. And the county and French Broad, they were all busy doing restoration for months. It's in the mountains, so there's no cell service. So like being home, we were completely cut off. So we would spend days in the community center. That's when I got to know the community. I got to meet all the other moms. The day we got internet was so good. We actually ended up going with Starlink and then got French Broad as well. That was right before Christmas. And we were feeling really good. I mean, the farmhouse was like, again, it was in rough condition. We had booked our contractors in to start work, I think that October. And they didn't end up being able to get started until February. They were working on restoration too. And so we ended up spending the winter there. And during Christmas, we realized how cold that house was. There was zero insulation. We had one propane heater. The windows were kind of cracked open. Like it was cold. It was like camping for the winter. But honestly, we were just so happy to be there. We were happy that it was ours. We were happy to be in Spring Creek. I remember we'd wake up and like my toothpaste would be frozen. The honey would be sludging. Like it was really, really cold, but we knew the renos would eventually come and we kind of stuck with it. We all got strep throat at one point, Mark got tonsillitis. It was hectic. It was a rough winter for sure. And then we're like, you know what? We'll just live through the renos. Like it's going to be great. We'll just kind of move from room to room. But the problem was, as soon as they started fixing the foundation, we lost one of our walls. It was cold, right, Charlie? Yeah, it was like really cold. Hi, Livy. I was like, man, I think we have to move out. If we woke up in the morning when it was 5 degrees outside, it was like 15 degrees in the house. This is Fahrenheit. With that wall gone, even a little plastic up, I don't know. We're tough, but we're not that tough. So I reached out to my old landlady. We ended up renting a tiny little place above like the garage that hadn't been affected by the flood. And we stayed in that little rental close to a year. It was warm. It had a kerosene heater. Again, so grateful that we could stay warm. And that summer was great. But then as it started to get colder again, this last Christmas, I'm like, ooh, it's cold. That kerosene heater's gonna be great in this little space. Turned it on. I'm like, oh shoot, it must be broken. So I reached out to my landlady and she's like, no, don't you remember? The storm knocked out the kerosene. There's no more kerosene. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do another winter. So we moved to Asheville, which is an hour away. We've been renting in Asheville ever since and basically commuting every other day to the farmhouse to make sure like all the animals are okay. We pay an animal sitter on the days that we can't make it. And we're finally at a place where we are looking at starting to move our belongings back into the farmhouse. I think we're going to get power next week, and I think we're going to be able to take possession again. We are so excited. The rentals have gone really well. It's a way bigger project than we thought it was going to be. We thought it was going to be like an 8-week project where we just fix the foundation. Turns out when you fix one thing, you start fixing everything. That's been the last 3 years. It's been hectic. One thing my father-in-law commented on is he's like, how exhausting just to go through it all. But like one thing I'd say is you guys never complained. And my husband made the comment of like, we had each other. We had our health, with the exception of strep throat, which was rough. And we were just happy to be here. And we're about to start a new saga at the farmhouse once we're actually living there, which is pretty soon.